Hello, dear chess friends of International Chess School. In this lecture, I will discuss one more time how to defend in a difficult position, when to use the direct defense, which means defending the sensitive squares, the focal points in your camp, following the principle of the economy in defense, and when to use the active defense, which is guided by exploiting the commitment of the opponent's plan, the committal moves in the enemy camp, and where the timing of launching a counterplay, launching a counterattack is very important. When we are defending directly, we have to keep the harmony between our forces, and when we try to defend actively, the main target, the main idea is to destroy the coordination between the enemy forces. The position that you see on the board is extracted from a game between the known grandmasters Samuel Reshevsky and Max Hoive, played in Amsterdam in 1950. And as you may discover, the position arises from an Imso-Indian defense, where White spent some tempos playing on the queen side, like bishop c1, d2, then bishop d2 takes c3. He also made a move with the pawn, while with the knight from g5, White tries to create an attack against Black's king. This is helped by the fact that the knight from f6 is unstable. The bishop can take the knight, and if the queen takes the knight, then White's queen will deliver mate at the second move. Now we have two moves at disposal. One is g6. Actually, we have three moves. One is g6, which is a form of direct defense. Black tries to interfere the pawn on b1, h7 diagonal. Another move is rook e8, which is a provocative move. Is at the border between the passive and the active defense. Actually, with the move rook e8, which was played in the game, Black wanted to provoke White to commit even more in attack, because Black knew that there's no mate. The move rook e8, besides the fact that provokes White's pieces, involves a king's flight, which is also a method of direct defense. The king will find a safer home on e7 in the absence of the dark square's bishop. Another possibility would be a forcing move, which is e5. It has the same idea as rook e8, but after bishop e5, rook e8, bishop d4, bishop e7, with the help of a pawn sacrifice, Black wants to use the fact that White didn't connected his rooks, and the bishop from f1 is undefended, and his king remained in the center may become vulnerable. And after b4, here h6. Actually, this is an important pair of moves. When White plays b4, Black answers with h6. The fight is around the key square e4. So again, when you are defending, even if you are defending directly or indirectly, you have to pay attention to the control of the center squares. I sometimes describe the center, the important four central squares, E4, E5, D4, D5, to my younger students as a top of the hill. If you control the top of the hill, you are able to control the entire board. Let's see why G6 in the initial position, why G6 doesn't work. G6 is too passive, and his main drawback is that it makes the knight from F6 unstable. After B4, now H6 is no longer effective, as white can take on F7 and G6 will be hanging, so there's no time for H6. Not A6, H4, H6 only now, but after H5, white has local forces superiority there, two minor pieces, two major pieces, and a pawn, while black is defending only with the pawn and the knight, so it's 5 against 2 pieces superiority, and white's attack has a higher speed. For example, in this position, if black plays knight h5, white will be glad to remove the most important defender with rook h5. Of course, g takes h5 is not possible because of the mate, and if black wants to take advantage of the hanging white's pieces with f5, white can simply continue with knight e6 or rook h6. Knight takes e6, d takes e6, rook h6, and it is obvious that black's king is in danger. Again, after h5, if black tries h takes g5, using the method of elimination, removing one of the attackers. The problem, the drawback of this idea is that white will be able to connect the rook and the bishop in attack. H takes g6, bishop e7, and g7. An amazing move. Of course, f takes g6 wasn't possible because queen takes g6 will be made, and after g7 the black king is lured on g7, but this will be met by queen h7 mate because we have a pin on the long diagonal. When we are trying to exploit the pin, we have to remember that the forcing move sometimes will be delivered on a square which apparently is controlled by the pinned piece, but because of the pin, the square in fact is no longer controlled. Instead of g6 or e5, black decided here for rook e8. An amazing concept. This in fact is a provocation, an indirect defense. Black wants to provoke white to give his pair of bishops. When there's no mate because of the king's flight to e7, for example, bishop takes, queen h7 check, king f8, and now after queen h7, queen h5, king e7, queen f3. Look how many moves white had to spend with the queen before it offers the queen's trade. But after queen g5, queen a8, this is the so-called time cruncher. this queen has crunched a lot of tempos, and during this time white king is completely exposed on dark squares. So if we want to exploit this weakened diagonal, we have to play knight b3 with a triple idea. It attacks the knight, the rook from a1. It releases the 5th rank for the queen when queen a5 is threatened, and not in the last place, it prevents b2, b4, which could be played in case of queen a5. So there's no defense against the queen a5 or knight takes a1. White decided to repel black's pieces first, b4, and again black is confronted with a difficult decision. He already took the decision of defending indirectly, so it has to look for the forcing move. Remember that searching the forcing move and knowing that we have to reduce the amount of attackers sometimes will give us the answer. So black has to attack a knight on his own. For example, after knight a6, white will simply play something like e3, bishop d3, and it will increase the pressure on the king side. As always, after h6, he has the interesting reply, h4. Black played h6. It is absolutely necessary to deflect or to remove that powerful knight. h4. Again, knight a6 is not an option, since it reduces this knight to passivity and loses control over the key square, the central square, e4. Now, after rook d1, the knight from g5 is untouchable, as after h takes g5, h takes g5, when the queen arrives on h7, the g7 pawn will be hanging as well, as black doesn't have any knight move to defend the g7 pawn. And after bishop b7, f3, black has no further improvement possibilities. In the modern chess, even if the position is balanced, you have to pay attention to the possibilities in the final position. At the end of the calculation, you have to see if there are improvements to be made in your position, or your pieces are stuck in on difficult squares, and an improvement maneuver will require too many moves. So after h6, white played h4. I told you that knight a6 is not an option, so h takes g5, removing one attacker. If h takes g5, knight f takes knight fe4, this is the concept of black. He wants to interfere the coordination between the queen and the rook, and if white takes on c5, black plays bishop b7, and after f3, black is just on time. Knight takes g5, and unfortunately the pawn from f3 can't deflect the knight because of knight e4 back. So the knight on g5 is pretty stable. After long castle, rook c8, black has a very dangerous counterattack on the queen side. You see, White didn't manage to realize local forces superiority. It takes two pieces to mate, while it could be three attackers here, the queen, the rook and the bishop, while black is defending with the knight, which defends h7, and the pawn, which defends h8. So it isn't enough for White to succeed. After h takes g5, White decided to play b takes e5 and keep the tension on the king side. He noticed that g4 is a bad move. It is bad because we are talking about the speed of the attack, and if White's attack has a higher speed, so it has to be black's defense, while g4, it's a quiet move, which in fact doesn't solve the problem of the h file. After g4, h5 will come, threatening h6, using the overburden position of the g7 pawn. e5, f3 with a very dangerous initiative. White will delay any king move, and only when his attack will have better prospects, only then he will decide to castle long. So after b takes e5, g takes h4 is a very useful move. This is the kind of direct defense. The idea behind this move, illustrating the direct defense, is to stabilize the knight from f6 in the first place. So at the previous moves, black wanted to install a knight on e4 and to break the coordination between White's forces, while now he's trying to hold the lines. He tries to stabilize his defenders. Rook takes h4, b takes e5. Again, bishop takes f6 is too committal, because after queen takes, queen h7, king f8, and the king will be safe on e7, while in the absence of the dark squares bishop, both the rook and the king from e1 will be exposed. Now g4 was the best way for White to continue the attack. After g4, I believe that White has a small superiority, because after d5, bishop g2, knight e4, the same idea to interfere b1 h7 diagonal, and attacks the rook from h4 at the same time. Rook h5, knight takes, queen f6, queen takes f6, g takes f6. In this position, White's pieces seems to be better displayed, but at least black survived to the king side attack. Take notice that black has an extra pawn here, so if he loses the d5 pawn, White will only establish the equality. The Grandmaster Reshevsky found a very creative resource here. He played queen d3. The idea is to bring the queen on h3. This is his to-do list. And then he will try to deflect the knight from f6 with g4, g5. So black has to act quickly. d6, not d5, because he will no longer has the possibility to push e5. The point of d6 is that sooner or later black will be able to interfere the pawn on e5. For example, after d5, queen h3, king f8. The king was forced to leave g8, but now the dark square's bishop is on the board. C takes d5, e takes d5, rook h8, king e7, bishop takes, g takes, king e3, queen e3. It is a very annoying initiative. Bishop e6 and queen takes e5 with almost a winning position for white. So after queen d3, black played d6. This move again is a sort of direct defense. It keeps control over central square, e5. Black is ready to push e5 himself, and at the same time he wants to play bishop e7, so he needs to have plenty of options on that diagonal for the bishop. If bishop f6, now it's clear that black will take with the queen and there's no mate. g4. White continues to attack, but if the attack fails, then black will be on top. What do you have to do when you're confronted with a winged attack? You have to keep your attention focused on the center. And black remembered his previous idea to interfere a knight on e4, so he played bishop e7. This is again the active defense, the indirect one. The passive move here, king f8, which is the passive defense, involving a king self-defense, will be met by g5, knight g8, rook h8, followed by queen h7 at the next move, and the black king will be mated. So what's important in this case, it is to keep the harmony between your forces. You have to bring fresh forces in defense, and with bishop e7 you are trying to defend actively using the e4 square instead of creating a barricade on your own camp. When you want to reduce your position to passivity, you have to think twice. It's the last option, and usually works when you have only one weakness. But in this case, when the king is bad, the knight is deprived of the best squares. The g7 pawn could be attacked. There's no way to defend like this passively. If you have only a weak pawn, then you can do it. So after g4, bishop e7, g5, knight e4. Actually, black wants to trade some pieces, and this is the method of elimination. He wants to remove the dangerous rook from h4. In fact, it will transpose to a position with material equivalence, as two minor pieces are well compensated by a rook and a pawn as we approach the endgame. Now queen h3 was needed. White has to be consequent. After king f8, g6 with the purpose of gaining a support square for the queen on f7, knight g5, queen g4, f6, f4, and white's attack goes on. Now the point is that after knight e4, white will be able to bring the light square's bishop in attack. At the same time, he brought the pawn from f4 in attack. While in this case, after rook e4, black's first point on to-do list, repelling white's attack, was completed. Bishop takes e4, queen takes e4. We are confronted with a complex endgame here, but there's no mate anymore. Queen takes g5, queen g2. Queen takes g2 will be a serious mistake here. Please avoid to do such trades which helps the opponent improve the position of his remaining forces. There's no need to activate that passive, still passive bishop from f1. Queen h6, queen h3, queen takes, bishop takes. This is a totally different story. Rook ab8, bishop g2. It is the same position as earlier, but now is black's turn to move. King f8, king d2, king e7. If bishop takes g7, a skewer will decide the game. Rook g8, f4, f6, king c2, rook h8, bishop f3, rook h4, and the game ended in a draw, but at this moment black had a favorable position. I hope you will replay this example on the board, that you will try to understand the concepts, that you will try to discover the moves on your own in such cases. And please remember that good defending skills are absolutely necessary, but a good defender has to calculate correctly the lines. It doesn't have to go very deep inside the variations, but at least it has to foresee all the opponent's reply, and it has to assess which is the best way, which is the best kind of defense, the active or the indirect defense, as it was the case in most of the moves in this game, or the passive or the direct defense. Till our next